The haunting of Bellwood Asylum. It all began on a chilly autumn morning, the day Sean and I set out on our mission to uncover the hidden horrors of the Bellwood Asylum. As an investigative journalist, I had always been drawn to stories that lurked in the shadows, waiting to be revealed, and the Bellwood Asylum was the darkest shadow of them all. Rumors about the asylum's grim past had circulated for decades, whispered secrets among the town's residents. They spoke of unspeakable atrocities, of the horrific experiments conducted on innocent children, and the malevolent spirits that were said to haunt the decaying building. It was a story too enticing to ignore, and with my trusty cameraman Sean by my side, we were determined to uncover the truth. Our journey began with the collection of eyewitness accounts from the elderly residents of the town. They had grown up hearing the eerie tales of the asylum, and they shared chilling stories of strange occurrences around the abandoned building, mysterious lights flickering in the dead of night, haunting cries that echoed through the woods, and sightings of shadowy figures moving behind shattered windows. But it wasn't just local legends that fueled our investigation. We delved deep into historical records, sifting through dusty archives and yellowed pages. The documents we uncovered hinted at the asylum's sinister past, a place where children had been subjected to grotesque experiments, their innocent lives forever scarred. With every interview and document we collected, the darkness surrounding Bellwood Asylum became more tangible. The town's history seemed intertwined with the facility, like a stain that refused to fade. Our growing obsession with the asylum led us to make a bold decision. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sean and I decided to venture inside the forsaken building, determined to confront the malevolent whispers that seemed to seep from its very walls. As we pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside, the atmosphere grew oppressively heavy. Our flashlights pierced through the inky darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper and shattered glass. The asylum's corridors stretched endlessly before us, and it felt as though time had frozen within its decaying walls. We continued to explore, guided only by the flickering beams of our flashlights. The air grew colder with every step, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the sound of our echoing footsteps. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of our vision, playing tricks on our frayed nerves. It was during this extended exploration that we began to hear the first faint murmurs, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and yet were everywhere. They were incomprehensible, like the jumbled voices of the forgotten souls trapped within the asylum's grim history. As we ventured deeper into the asylum's decaying corridors, the temperature plummeted and an oppressive darkness enveloped us. I could feel an icy hand brushing against my skin, and Sean's voice trembled as he whispered, "Do you hear that, Rachel?" Ghostly voices echoed through the halls, their mournful cries chilling me to the bone. We saw a shadowy figure darting in and out of doorways, its outline obscure yet undeniably reminiscent of a nurse. Panic surged through us, but we couldn't leave, not when we were so close to uncovering the truth. The asylum seemed to lead us to a hidden chamber deep within its bowels. There, amidst crumbling walls and decaying furniture, we found old journals and faded photographs. The horrors they revealed were beyond our darkest nightmares. Accounts of experiments performed on innocent children, their pain and suffering meticulously documented. We spent hours poring over the journals, our faces bathed in the dim light of our flashlights. The words on those pages told of unimaginable cruelty, children subjected to torturous procedures in the name of science, their anguished pleas falling on deaf ears. It was as if we were bearing witness to the tortured souls themselves, their voices echoing through the pages. But as we delved deeper into the journal entries, a more sinister truth began to emerge. It seemed that the experiments were not merely the work of one deranged scientist, but were sanctioned by the highest authorities within the asylum. The staff, including nurses and doctors, had been complicit in the unspeakable acts. The depths of human cruelty knew no bounds in the dark history of Bellwood Asylum. As we continued our investigation, we stumbled upon a collection of photographs tucked away in a dusty corner of the chamber. They depicted the children who had suffered within these walls, gaunt faces, hollow eyes, and the unmistakable look of despair etched onto their young features. Each photograph was a haunting reminder of the innocent lives that had been forever scarred. Amidst the journals and photographs, we found one last document, a handwritten letter that bore witness to the guilt of one of the nurses. In her shaky script, she confessed her involvement in the experiments and the torment that had plagued her conscience ever since. It was a chilling testament to the horrors that had unfolded within the asylum's walls. But our exploration was not without consequence. As we delved deeper into the asylum's darkest secrets, the shadowy figure we had encountered earlier materialized. It was the dark spirit of a nurse who had once worked there. This time, her presence grew stronger, and her spectral rage intensified. She seemed desperate to prevent us from exposing the truth, her vengeful intentions palpable. Suddenly, a bone-chilling scream echoed through the chamber, and I turned to see Sean writhing in agony, his hands clutching his head as if he were being torn apart from within. The spirit's wrath had found its target, and Sean was its victim. As Sean's agonized screams pierced the air, I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. It was a gut-wrenching decision, but I knew that I had to make it. The malevolent spirit had latched onto Sean, its vengeful fury consuming him. I couldn't help him now. There was nothing I could do to free him from the spirit's grip. Desperation and fear coursed through my veins as I stumbled out of the hidden chamber, clutching the damning evidence in my trembling hands. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to turn back, to rescue my friend from the clutches of the malevolent force that had ensnared him. But as I reached the chamber's threshold, a force more powerful than fear held me back. The voice of reason whispered in my ear, reminding me that Sean's sacrifice might be the only way to ensure the truth saw the light of day. His torment could serve as irrefutable evidence of the darkness that had plagued the asylum for so long. Tears streamed down my face as I made the heart-wrenching decision to leave him behind. I whispered words of encouragement and promised to return, though deep inside, I knew that his chances of survival were slim. With one last agonized glance back at my friend, I fled the chamber, determined to escape the asylum's clutches and share the damning evidence with the world. As I emerged from the asylum, the echoes of Sean's torment still reverberating in my ears, my heart was heavy with grief and guilt. I had left my friend behind, a sacrifice to the malevolent force that had consumed him. It was a choice I never thought I would have to make, one that haunted my every step. But I knew that his sacrifice was not in vain. The evidence I had clutched in my trembling hands would serve as a damning testament to the horrors of Bellwood Asylum. The world needed to know the truth, to bear witness to the atrocities that had occurred within those cursed walls. With a heavy heart, I made my way back to the town, driven by the unwavering determination to publish our findings. The chilling tale of the asylum's dark history would soon be exposed to the world. I immediately contacted the local authorities, sharing the evidence we had collected and informing them of Sean's predicament. They launched a search party, their flashlights cutting through the night as they combed every inch of the asylum. Hours turned into days, and still, there was no sign of Sean. It was as if the asylum had swallowed him whole, erasing any trace of his presence. The town was gripped by a sense of unease and sorrow as they realized the grim reality of what had transpired. Sean had sacrificed himself for the sake of the truth, and it seemed that the malevolent spirit had claimed him as its own. Despite our efforts, the authorities could find no trace of my dear friend. His disappearance became an enduring mystery, a painful reminder of the horrors we had uncovered. The town rallied together to honor his memory, erecting a memorial in his name to ensure that his sacrifice would never be forgotten. Our investigative journey had not only uncovered the truth, but had also helped the tortured souls find closure. The tale of Bellwood Asylum became a cautionary one, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked scientific curiosity and the enduring power of malevolence that lingers in the shadows. Sean's sacrifice will forever be etched in my memory, a painful reminder of the price we paid for uncovering the truth. The haunting of Hillside Manor. When I was just a child, my family moved into a seemingly ordinary house on the outskirts of town, Hillside Manor. It was a charming old place, with ivy-covered walls and a sprawling garden that seemed to stretch on forever. As a child, I was enchanted by its quaint appearance, unaware of the darkness that lurked within. My parents had always wanted a home with character, and Hillside Manor appeared to be the perfect fit. It wasn't long before we settled in, and I, an only child at the time, explored every nook and cranny with the curiosity only a child possesses. In the beginning, everything seemed idyllic. My parents laughed, and I reveled in the freedom of our new home. Yet, even in those early days, there were hints of something amiss. Whispers in the dead of night, faint laughter echoing from empty rooms, and shadows that moved of their own accord. But we dismissed them as the quirks of an old house. As the years passed, the house began to change. It started subtly. A painting that shifted when you blinked, doors that creaked open at odd hours, and cold spots that seemed to follow you from room to room. My parents noticed it too, but they were determined to hold on to the dream of a perfect family home. By the time I had grown older, the whispers in the night had turned into anguished cries, and the laughter had become a haunting chorus. Doors slammed shut with violent force, and the once enchanted garden had withered into a tangle of thorns and brambles. My parents, trapped in their stubborn denial, insisted that it was all in our heads. But I knew better. I could feel the malevolent presence that had taken root in Hillside Manor, a force that hungered for something I couldn't quite comprehend. It was during one particularly eerie night that I saw it. The apparition of a pale, gaunt figure that drifted down the grand staircase, its eyes hollow and empty. I watched in horror as it reached out for me, its icy fingers brushing against my skin before vanishing into the darkness. Terrified and alone, I knew that we were prisoners in our own home, bound to Hillside Manor by a force beyond our control. My parents refused to acknowledge the truth, but I had seen enough to understand that our idyllic house was anything but, and the haunting had only just begun. As the years passed, the malevolent presence within Hillside Manor grew more pronounced, and my family could no longer deny the eerie occurrences unfolding around us. My parents, both rational and pragmatic, sought to explain the inexplicable. They began researching the history of our home, digging through dusty archives, and talking to neighbors who had lived in the area for generations. Their findings revealed a troubling truth. The land on which Hillside Manor stood had once been the site of a dark and tragic chapter in our town's history. Decades earlier, a family had occupied the same house, and a series of mysterious deaths had plagued them. Whispers of curses and malevolent spirits had surrounded the property, and the family had eventually abandoned the house, leaving behind a legacy of fear and despair. My parents were reluctant to accept the supernatural, but the evidence was mounting. They consulted experts in paranormal investigations and even brought in a local medium to communicate with whatever entity had taken residence in our home. The medium's seance yielded chilling results, as a spectral voice spoke of suffering and vengeance. With a heavy heart, my father, a man of science, reluctantly admitted that there might be forces at play beyond our understanding. My mother, equally pragmatic, began seeking ways to cleanse the house of its malevolent entity. They believed that by addressing the unresolved pain of the past, we could free ourselves from the grasp of Hillside Manor's haunting. Together, as a family, we embarked on a series of rituals and ceremonies meant to appease the restless spirits that roamed our home. We lit candles, burned sage, and even spoke aloud the names of the family who had met their tragic end here, as if acknowledging their existence might offer some solace. For a time, it seemed as though our efforts were working. The disturbances grew less frequent, and the house felt almost peaceful. But we soon realized that the entity within Hillside Manor was not so easily appeased. It had endured decades of anguish and was not willing to let go. As the years stretched on, our family's struggle with the malevolent entity within Hillside Manor took its toll. My parents had done everything in their power to understand and combat the haunting, but the relentless force continued to escalate its torment. We couldn't escape the unsettling events that unfolded within the house's walls. Objects moved of their own accord, and disembodied voices echoed through the halls. The once charming rooms had become chambers of dread, and our lives were held hostage by the relentless presence that refused to relent. My parents, who had once been beacons of rationality, began to unravel under the unrelenting strain. Sleepless nights and the ceaseless haunting had taken a toll on their mental and physical health. Desperation pushed them to seek out experts in the paranormal, even delving into arcane rituals that promised a release from the malevolent grip. Despite all their efforts, the malevolent presence within Hillside Manor grew increasingly daring. It started appearing as shadowy forms lurking in the corners and dark doorways. The once whispers transformed into crazed laughter, and doors slammed shut with a thunderous force. The undeniable, horrifying truth was impossible to ignore. We had become captives in our very own home, tormented by an unquenchable evil. Then, on one ominous night, when the haunting had reached its peak, my parents sat me down to reveal a bone-chilling revelation. Up in the attic, they had unearthed a diary, authored by a previous resident. This diary documented their spiral into madness as they grappled with the malevolent force that had plagued their lives, mirroring our own horrifying experience. In their final entry, written with trembling hands, they spoke of a desperate plan, a ritual that could potentially transfer the malevolent entity to another living host, a sacrifice to break the cycle of suffering. My parents believed that they had no choice but to carry out this dark ritual in the hope that it might free our family from the relentless haunting. I watched in silent horror as my parents prepared for the ritual, their faces etched with resignation. They believed that they were making a noble sacrifice to protect their child from the malevolent force that had taken root in our home. But as the ritual unfolded, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that our desperate act would unleash a new kind of horror upon us all. The night of the dark ritual descended upon Hillside Manor like a shroud of dread. My parents had gathered the necessary items, obscure artifacts that held the promise of transferring the malevolent entity to a new host. Their faces were etched with a mixture of determination and fear, for they believed this sacrifice was the only way to end our family's torment. As we gathered in the dimly lit living room, the weight of our decision hung heavily in the air. The room felt charged with an ominous energy, as though the very walls of Hillside Manor were aware of the impending act. The ritual commenced with solemn incantations and the burning of sacred herbs. My parents' voices wavered as they chanted words from an ancient tome, invoking forces beyond our understanding. I watched, paralyzed by a creeping dread, as they prepared to transfer the malevolent entity into an unwitting vessel. A mirror, its surface dark as night, had been placed at the center of the room. The belief was that the malevolent force would be drawn into the mirror, trapping it within the glass. But as the ritual progressed, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, and a sense of unease settled over us all. Then, in a chilling moment, the mirror began to ripple, as though a storm raged within its depths. The malevolent entity fought against its capture with a fury that defied comprehension. Shadows coiled and writhed within the glass, and the room was filled with an otherworldly howl that chilled us to the bone. In a final, desperate act, my parents chanted the words of transfer, directing the malevolent force into the mirror. The mirror seemed to shatter with a deafening roar, shards of glass scattering across the room like fragments of a broken soul. The malevolent entity was contained, or so we thought. The room fell silent, and an eerie stillness settled upon Hillside Manor. My parents, exhausted and drained, believed they had succeeded in saving our family from the haunting. But as I gazed at the shattered mirror, I couldn't help but feel that we had unleashed a new horror, one that was now trapped within the fractured glass, waiting for a chance to escape and continue its reign of terror. Our family had paid a terrible price to survive, but the malevolent force had not been defeated, merely contained, and our lives remained forever entwined with the darkness of Hillside Manor. Years have passed since I left Hillside Manor, the place that had once been my family's dream home, but had become a living nightmare. The haunting had left scars, both seen and unseen, on each of us. My parents had aged prematurely under the weight of what they had endured, and though they sought peace and redemption, The malevolent entity's legacy haunted their every step. We tried to move on, to leave behind the darkness that clung to our past, but it was a specter that refused to fade entirely. I, the child who had grown into an adult, had embarked on a new life in a different place, but the memories of Hillside Manor remained a chilling presence in the recesses of my mind. The shattered mirror, a relic of our desperate ritual, had been left behind, a stark reminder of the malevolent force that still lingered, biding its time. I couldn't help but wonder if the entity had found a way to escape its glass prison, if it continued to torment new inhabitants, or if it had simply withdrawn into a dormant state. The answers remained elusive, hidden within the mysteries of Hillside Manor. Now, as I recount the haunting of Hillside Manor, it serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that there are forces in this world beyond our comprehension, and that sometimes, even the most desperate acts can have consequences that endure far beyond our understanding. The Secrets of the Silent Abode. It was a warm summer evening when my friends and I set out on an adventure to explore an old, abandoned house that stood alone in the middle of a vast, open field. We'd heard rumors about this place for years, but no one had ever dared to enter. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon as we approached the house. Its dark silhouette stood against the fading light, and the air was filled with a palpable sense of anticipation. We'd driven for miles to reach this remote location, bumping along a dirt road that seemed to lead nowhere. As we parked our car, the chirping of crickets filled the air, and the sky above was painted with hues of orange and pink. The place had a strange, isolated beauty, but it was also undeniably creepy. We had no idea what we were getting into, but our curiosity pushed us forward. The stories and legends surrounding the house had always intrigued us. Some said it was haunted by the spirits of those who'd lived there long ago, while others claimed it was a site of strange occurrences that defied explanation. We were determined to find out the truth, or at least see if there was any substance to the tales about the lonely house in the field. As we approached the house, the field around us was overgrown with tall, wild grass. The path leading to the front door was barely visible, hidden beneath the lush vegetation. We were forced to trudge through the untamed flora, our footsteps muffled by the thick, swaying grass. The house loomed closer now, revealing its true state of disrepair. The wooden boards were weathered and peeling, the windows shattered, and the front porch had partially collapsed. An odd sense of abandonment hung over the place. There was an eerie silence, disturbed only by the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze. The warm, golden hues of the setting sun cast long, ominous shadows that stretched across the field, making the house appear even more foreboding. We exchanged nervous glances but pressed on, feeling the weight of anticipation and unease grow with every step. As we cautiously approached the front door, its once grand facade had succumbed to time's relentless march. The peeling paint and cracked wood hinted at the stories the house had to tell. The door, surprisingly, was unlocked, and it creaked open with a mournful groan. The smell of decay and mildew hit us like a physical force as we entered. The interior was dimly lit, with dusty furniture draped in tattered white sheets, frozen in time. Our footsteps echoed through the empty hallways, the floorboards groaning beneath us. We explored room after room, each one revealing glimpses of the lives that had once been lived here. Faded photographs on the walls, forgotten children's toys strewn on the floor, and a forgotten family's history scattered throughout. One thing was certain: this house had been abandoned in haste. It was as if its previous occupants had fled, leaving behind their belongings and their memories. The air felt heavy with the weight of untold stories. As we moved deeper into the house, the silence seemed to grow more oppressive, and a sense of being watched from the shadows nagged at the edges of our minds. Our curiosity grew with every room we entered, but so did the strange feeling that we were intruding on something profoundly personal. It was as if the house itself was silently urging us to leave, but our desire to uncover its secrets kept us going deeper into its haunted depths. There was a palpable tension in the air, and we couldn't help but wonder what secrets this forsaken house held and what might be lurking in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. In the dim light, we continued our exploration of the house. It was clear that time had taken its toll on the once grand structure. Our footsteps echoed as we moved from room to room, revealing the remnants of lives long gone. We discovered an old, peeling wallpaper in what appeared to be a children's room. Faded, childish drawings and a lone, broken toy train sat in a corner. The sight of it sent a shiver down our spines. What happened to the child who had once called this room home? The air felt charged with an unsettling energy, as though the house itself was trying to communicate with us. The feeling of being watched intensified, and we couldn't help but exchange nervous glances. The mystery of this place was becoming more unnerving by the minute, but our curiosity still drove us to explore further. We continued our exploration, now with a heightened sense of unease. The more rooms we entered, the more we felt like unwelcome guests in a place that didn't want to give up its secrets. In one room, we discovered an old dining table, covered in a layer of dust, as if someone had left it hastily. The chairs were pushed back, as if the occupants had abruptly abandoned their meal. Forgotten plates, now covered in grime, were still set, frozen in time. Every room had a story to tell, but none of them revealed what had driven the inhabitants away. We felt like we were being watched, but there was no one to be seen. The silence was oppressive, interrupted only by the occasional creak of the house settling. As we moved deeper into the house, it became clear that something had gone terribly wrong here. It was an unshakable feeling, a sense that the house was trying to communicate with us in its own eerie, silent way. Our curiosity still drove us forward, but with each passing moment, we couldn't help but wonder if uncovering the truth was worth the growing sense of dread that hung in the air. Our exploration of the attic revealed more of the house's forgotten history. The cramped space was filled with dusty old boxes, their contents hidden from the world for decades. Among them, we found an assortment of yellowing journals and faded letters. As we sifted through the pages, the story of the house's previous inhabitants began to take shape. A family had once lived here, their daily lives and personal struggles chronicled in the journals. They spoke of happier times, of birthdays celebrated, and holidays shared within these very walls. But as we continued to read, the tone of the entries changed. The writings became darker, hinting at an unseen force that had gradually consumed the family's joy. They described strange occurrences, unexplained noises in the night, and a sense of being watched by an unseen presence. One journal, in particular, contained a disturbing revelation. It spoke of a hidden room in the house, a room that the family believed held the key to their torment. They referred to it as the heart of darkness. The more we delved into their accounts, the more we became convinced that our journey to this lonely house had taken an unsettling turn. The mystery was deepening, and the sense of dread in the attic was palpable. We knew we had to find this hidden room and uncover the secrets it held. Determined to unravel the mystery that hung over the house, we decided to search for the hidden room mentioned in the journal. Armed with flashlights, we descended from the attic and explored the house once more. After some time, we discovered a loose floorboard in one of the hallways. It took some effort, but we managed to pry it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down into the depths of the house. The stale air that wafted up from below gave us pause, but we pressed on. The staircase seemed to descend into darkness, the steps creaking underfoot. It was as if we were delving into a hidden part of the house that had been kept secret for a reason. Our flashlights revealed the passage was old, damp, and lined with cobwebs. As we descended further, the anticipation weighed heavily on our minds, and we couldn't help but wonder what we might find in the depths of this lonely, forgotten place. The narrow staircase led us to a small, dimly lit chamber hidden beneath the house. It was evident that this room had been kept secret, as though the family who once lived here had gone to great lengths to conceal it. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and drawings, and in the center of the room, an ancient, ornate chest rested. It was covered in dust, But when we opened it, we discovered an array of bizarre ornaments and trinkets. Each item within the chest emitted a disturbing, otherworldly glow. The air in the chamber grew thick with an unnatural energy as we examined the mysterious objects. It was as if the very presence of these ornaments cast a shadow over our thoughts and senses. The items were unlike anything we had ever seen, with intricate carvings and inscriptions in a language that was unfamiliar and unsettling. As we gazed upon the eerie ornaments and trinkets in the chest, a sense of dread hung in the air. It was clear that these objects were the source of the darkness that had plagued the house and its former inhabitants for generations. With a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, we carefully examined the artifacts, tracing the strange symbols and inscriptions etched into them. The room felt charged with an unnatural energy, as if the very air had grown heavy with malevolence. In our fascination, we unwittingly disturbed the ancient relics. A low, haunting hum filled the chamber, and the ornaments began to emit an unholy, pulsating light. The symbols on the walls seemed to come to life, and the entire chamber quaked with a dark force. Fear surged through us as we realized that we had awakened something beyond our understanding. The room became a maelstrom of supernatural energy, and shadows danced on the walls, contorted and menacing. We knew we had to leave, but escape seemed impossible as the malevolent force enveloped us. Desperation and fear gripped our hearts as we struggled to shut the chest. In our frantic efforts, one of the ornaments fell to the ground and shattered, releasing a piercing, soul-chilling shriek that echoed through the house. With all our strength, we managed to seal the chest, and the chamber fell into an eerie silence. But the malevolence had been set free, and the house seemed to shudder with a newfound, restless energy. We fled, knowing that we had uncovered a darkness that should have remained hidden, leaving the lonely house behind and vowing never to return. As we left, we couldn't help but wonder what malevolent entity we had unleashed, and what horrors might now lurk within the house, waiting for the next curious souls to cross its threshold. The haunting secrets of the lonely house in the field remained, and our journey had ended in a revelation that we could never have anticipated. And so, as we drove away from that forsaken place, the once quiet field seemed to whisper secrets of its own. The dark presence that we had unwittingly awakened would now linger within the house, a menacing force that could not be contained. Our exploration had come to an end, but the mystery of the lonely house would endure, a chilling reminder that some secrets are better left undisturbed, and that there are depths of darkness that should never be uncovered. That's all for today, folks. If you've enjoyed today's story, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what you thought of it and what type of story you would like to hear about next. See you all very soon.